I used to think I'd remember that night for the drinks, the laughs, the send-off from the guys at the warehouse. It was my farewell party, after all. 10 years of loading freight, moving pallets, late-night shifts, and sweat-soaked uniforms. All coming to a quiet end inside a Portland pub with sticky floors and loud music. I should have felt proud. Relieved, maybe. I was finally done. Moving on to something better. But deep down, there was this quiet, gnawing unease I couldn't shake. The kind that doesn't shout, it whispers. And that night, it whispered louder than ever. Leslie sat beside me in the booth, her hand casually resting on my knee. Across from us were her sisters, Jenna and Marcy, already a few drinks in, cracking jokes and poking fun at everyone. The pub was packed, lights dimmed, music thumping from the back speakers. I was surrounded by guys I'd worked alongside for years, some of them more like brothers than co-workers. At some point between the second round of beers and the plate of half-eaten nachos, I noticed Leslie's phone light up on the table. It buzzed once, then again. She moved fast, but not fast enough. The screen glowed with a name I'd never seen before. Mark, do not answer. I blinked, my smile faltering just slightly. She saw me looking, and with a laugh that sounded too light, too rehearsed, she flipped the phone over and waved her hand like it was nothing. Ugh, him again, she said with a roll of her eyes. Some guy from work. Total weirdo. I blocked him twice, but I guess he found a way around it. Then she sipped her drink and smiled at me. Too sweet. Like I was the child and she was keeping me from asking too many questions. Oh yeah, I asked, trying to sound casual, but I felt something twist in my gut. Yeah, she said quickly, brushing her hair behind her ear. Obsessed or something. It's annoying. I didn't press it. I don't know why. Maybe because I didn't want to be that guy, the insecure boyfriend who makes a scene. Or maybe because, in that moment, I didn't want the answer. I wanted to enjoy my party, to pretend things were still normal between us. I didn't know it then, but that little moment, that tiny buzz on her phone, was the line between before and after. A few minutes later, someone tapped a spoon against a pint glass. The music lowered. People started gathering near the little raised platform at the back of the bar, where a projector screen had been pulled down. I figured someone had put together a slideshow or a video montage. That kind of thing was normal when people left the warehouse. A highlight reel, some goofy photos, maybe a few roasts. Get ready. One of my coworkers, Sam, said with a grin. You're about to get torched. I laughed. I expected to be teased. I even welcomed it. But I wasn't ready for what came next. The first slide flicked on. A blurry photo of me in the break room, eating chips and looking half asleep. The caption underneath read, Employee of the Month. For napping. A few chuckles scattered through the room. Then another slide. A fake chat log. My name at the top, a message bubble that read, You looked really good in that top today. We should hang out sometime, winky face. Laughter broke out. Another slide. Another fake message. I can't stop thinking about you, LOL. Don't tell anyone though. I blinked. It was styled like a text exchange. My profile picture, one I hadn't used in years, was in the corner. My name, my tone. But I'd never written any of it. I looked at Leslie. She wasn't just smiling. She was laughing. Her sisters? Crying from laughter. Jenna wiped a tear away. I can't believe you actually made those, she said to Leslie, like it was some kind of gift. Slide after slide flicked across the screen. Doctored images, quotes that never came out of my mouth, screensh asterisk ts stitched together to look like I was some kind of sleazy, clueless flirt at work. One showed me in a staged selfie with a woman from accounting, her name misspelled, a fake caption underneath. Just another day charming the lady's smiling face with sunglasses. The room erupted with laughter. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. I looked around, eyes were on me. Not with admiration, not even pity, just amusement. People nudging each other, smirking, pointing. Some were filming it on their phones. I tried to smile, tried to laugh along, but my face wouldn't move. Then came the kicker. A video clip played, a mock interview. Leslie, dressed in fake business attire, pretending to be an HR rep, said into the camera. It's been a long journey dealing with Evans. Affections, but we wish him the best. Preferably far, far away. The crowd howled. I didn't. I just stared. And finally, the last slide appeared. A cartoon graphic of me with exaggerated features, standing next to a giant warehouse shelf labeled HR Complaints. At the bottom, big bold letters. Evan Smooth Talker Mitchell. May he flirt no more. Leslie raised her glass and stood up. To Evan, she called out with a theatrical bow. A man of questionable professionalism and undeniable charm. We salute you. Glasses clinked. Cheers echoed through the room. I didn't move. I just sat there. Everything felt distant, like I was watching it all from underwater. I could hear the noise, see the smiles, feel the way people were trying not to make eye contact with me. Some were laughing too hard. Others were looking down at their drinks. Nobody said anything to me directly. Not even the guys I'd worked beside for years. And Leslie, the woman I'd trusted, loved, built my life around, was soaking it all in like it was some big comedy special. I stood up. Slowly. Someone called out, "Hey man, it's all in good fun." But I didn't reply. I didn't grab my coat. I didn't grab my wallet. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I just walked out. The heavy door of the pub slammed behind me, muffling the laughter and the fading voice of Leslie saying something about how he's such a good sport. Out on the street, the cold Portland air hit me like a slap. Rain had started, that soft, steady drizzle that made everything feel heavier than it was. I stood on the curb, blinking, trying to piece together what had just happened. I felt exposed, mocked, betrayed. And not just by strangers or acquaintances. By her. The person I came there with. The person who knew every secret, every story, every scar. She hadn't defended me. She hadn't just stood by. She orchestrated it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. A few missed texts from coworkers. "Dude, sorry, that was kinda harsh. You okay, man?" Didn't know she was gonna go that far. I turned the phone off and slid it back into my pocket. As I walked away from the bar, without my wallet, without my jacket, without even a destination, I realized something I should have seen a long time ago. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't just a bad joke. This was intentional, planned, staged. She wanted to humiliate me. She enjoyed it. And in that moment, I knew whatever version of Leslie I'd been holding on to in my mind. She didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. The walk from that pub to the place I ended up staying took a little over 2 hours. I didn't take the train, didn't call a ride. I just walked, past shuttered shops, puddles glowing with neon reflections, and people who didn't give me a second glance. Somewhere along the way, the drizzle turned to real rain, but I didn't care. My shirt clung to my back like it was trying to hold on to me harder than she ever had. By the time I reached the room I'd been renting, a shoebox on the far edge of town above a mechanic's shop, I felt stripped down, like I'd walked out of one life and into another without even knowing when the line was crossed. I turned the knob, stepped inside, and let the door shut behind me. No welcome home, no warmth, just 4 walls, a lumpy mattress, and a second-hand lamp that hummed when you turned it on. I peeled off my soaked clothes, tossed them on the floor, and sat on the edge of the bed. The silence hit me harder than anything else. And then the thoughts came, not just about what had happened, but about everything I'd missed, or ignored. Because the thing about betrayal is, it's rarely sudden. It's not one loud crack. It's a slow splinter, a creeping fracture that starts small, so small you tell yourself it's nothing. But it spreads, quietly, until something snaps. And when it does, all the moments you shrugged off come crashing back like a damn avalanche. Like the time Leslie came home late, around 2 a.m., and told me she and her coworkers had grabbed drinks after a team-building seminar. I remember the way her heels clicked unevenly on the floor, how she kicked them off and went straight to the shower without saying more than a few words. I remember the cologne. Not mine. Not even close. It was sharp, musky, something I'd never worn in my life. When I asked her about it, she blinked twice and smiled. "Oh, that? Probably from the Uber driver. Or someone at the bar." You know how packed it gets." I nodded. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. Then there was that weekend she claimed she was going to bend for a college reunion. Some of her old classmates were having a get-together. "No spouses," she'd said. I'd offered to help her pack. She said she already had it handled. While she was gone, I went online just out of curiosity. Looked up the reunion page on social media. Not a single mention. No photos. No tags. No evidence that it had happened at all. I asked her afterward, careful not to sound accusatory. "Weird that none of your friends posted anything about the reunion," I said, trying to sound casual. She shrugged. "They're old school. Most of them don't even use social media anymore." That didn't track. I'd met a few of them before. One of them had over 3,000 followers and posted twice a day like clockwork. Still, I let it go. Or when I found that hotel receipt in her car, folded neatly under the seat, like it had fallen from her purse. The room was in someone else's name. Nico Ramirez. I'd never heard of him. Never even heard her mention a coworker by that name. When I asked about it, she laughed. Like it was no big deal. "Oh, that's for a friend from the office. He needed a ride to a conference and booked the room under his name since I helped with the reservation." Right? Because that's what normal coworkers do. They make hotel reservations together and leave the paperwork in your glove box. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. Every time I caught something that didn't feel right, I swallowed it whole. Shoved it down with whatever excuses she gave me. I told myself I was overthinking it, reading into things too much. I even started questioning my own instincts, wondering if I was becoming paranoid. But now, sitting on this creaky mattress with rain tapping against the window like a metronome for everything I'd ignored, it all came back in vivid detail. There were nights she'd sit on the couch beside me, glued to her laptop, always with the screen tilted just enough that I couldn't see. If I asked what she was doing, she'd say work emails or research, but her fingers moved like they were texting, not typing. Sometimes she'd close the laptop the second I entered the room. One night, I walked in without knocking, and she practically jumped, slammed the lid shut and said, "Jesus, Evan, you scared me." "What were you looking at?" I asked. "Just something dumb," she said, too quickly. BuzzFeed articles. She always had a reason, always something just plausible enough. But it wasn't just the physical clues. It was the emotional ones. The way her tone changed when she spoke to me. Shorter, sharper, like everything I said was a test she didn't have time to take. The way she started complimenting me less and criticizing me more. My job wasn't ambitious enough. My shirts weren't ironed like they used to be. I didn't take the lead in conversations like I did when we first met. I thought we were just going through a rough patch. Every couple has them. I tried harder, took her out more, paid more attention, brought flowers on Tuesdays, left her notes by the coffee machine. All of it felt like pouring myself into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. Still, I convinced myself this was just stress. Maybe her job, maybe mine, maybe life. I kept telling myself that if I worked harder, loved her harder, she'd come back to me. But what I didn't realize was, she was never planning to come back. And maybe she never left, because maybe she was never really there. She was always half somewhere else. Somewhere she never let me see. And now I think I know where. Because Mark, do not answer, wasn't just a wrong number or a weird coworker. He was real. And he was already in the cracks before I saw his name. I think back to the night I got sick food poisoning from some takeout. I was laid out in bed, sweating, nauseous, weak. She left for a girls' night 2 hours after I started throwing up. I begged her to stay just in case I needed to go to urgent care. "You'll be fine," she said, barely looking up from the mirror as she touched up her eyeliner. "You just need to sleep it off." She came home at 3 a.m. No explanation. Said her phone had died. And I believed her. Because what kind of person walks out on their sick partner for a lie? Now I know the answer. It was always right in front of me. Little lies. Tiny gaps. Moments where my gut said something was off and I told it to shut up. And now it won't stop screaming. The photo came on a Tuesday. I hadn't expected anything from that day. It was cold, gray, and dull, like most late February mornings in Portland. I had just finished a lukewarm coffee from a corner gas station and was about to clock in for another graveyard shift at the car rental lot. Life had shrunk down to the bare essentials. Eat, sleep, work, repeat. I was laying low, staying off social media, not talking to anyone from the warehouse. Leslie and I hadn't spoken since I walked out of the pub. I figured whatever answers I didn't have, I could learn to live without. Turns out I didn't have to. My old coworker Kyle sent the text. We weren't close, not really, but we'd shared plenty of late shifts over the years. He was one of the few who didn't laugh during the slideshow. I remembered that much. The message came in with a single line. Didn't know if you'd want to see this. Sorry if I'm overstepping. Attached was a photo. It wasn't blurry. It wasn't vague. It wasn't open to interpretation. Leslie, standing outside a jewelry store in Vancouver. Not Washington, Canada. She was with him. Tall guy, tan jacket, sunglasses perched on his head. Hand interlocked with hers like it had belonged there for years. His other hand held a small paper bag from the store. The kind they only give you after a big purchase. A ring, maybe, or a necklace. They weren't trying to hide. No hats, no sunglasses, no ducking behind signs or looking over shoulders. They were just there, laughing, comfortable, casual, like they were on vacation, like they were a couple. And there was a kid, a boy, couldn't have been more than 5 or 6, dark curly hair, holding Leslie's other hand. She was leaning down toward him, smiling wide. The kind of smile she hadn't given me in months, maybe years. I stared at that image longer than I cared to admit. At first, I tried to tell myself it wasn't real. Maybe it was a doppelganger. Maybe the lighting was weird. Maybe it was from before we even met. Some old photo someone dug up. But then I zoomed in. She was wearing the blue scarf I bought her last Christmas. The one she said she'd lost 2 months ago. The scarf I had turned the apartment upside down looking for. I remember asking her twice about it. She shrugged both times, said she must have left it at the office. But there it was, wrapped around her neck, right there in that photo, perfectly intact. Just tight enough to hide the little tattoo on her collarbone, the one I used to trace with my fingers when we lay in bed. Suddenly, every doubt I had collapsed into one undeniable truth. She hadn't made a mistake. She had made a choice. Not once, not twice, not in a single moment of weakness. This wasn't an accident. This was a life. A second, secret life that she had built while I was busy believing in the one we shared. The signs had always been there. I knew that now. But that photo took all the puzzle pieces and snapped them together in a way I couldn't ignore. There was no more room for excuses. No space for hope. No shadow of doubt left to hide in. That wasn't a fling. It was a family. And I wasn't part of it. I didn't respond to Kyle. What was I going to say? Thanks for the existential collapse? Instead, I saved the photo, turned my phone off, and sat on the curb outside the rental lot, trying not to be sick. For the next few hours, I wandered the city like a ghost. My legs moved, but my mind was elsewhere. Playing and replaying every conversation Leslie and I had ever had, now rescored with the sound of betrayal. Her laugh at the pub. Her voice saying, "Mark's just a creep." The way she used to pull away when I touched her. How she suddenly got good at lying while still looking me in the eye. I'd asked her once, not long before the party, if she ever wanted kids. She'd gotten real quiet, then said, "Maybe in another life." Another life. Turns out that life already existed, and she was living it without me. That night, back in the tiny rented room, I sat staring at the photo again, trying to pick it apart for anything that would change its meaning. But there was nothing. The lines were too clean, the body language too natural. There was no awkwardness, no hesitance, just ease. They fit. That was the worst part. It didn't feel like she was doing something wrong. Felt like she was home. Over the next few days, I didn't speak to anyone. Didn't answer calls. Ignored messages from mutual friends who just wanted to check in. I knew they'd seen it too. The photo made its rounds. Maybe not viral, but enough to reach the people who mattered, enough for the truth to stop being mine alone. And honestly, I was fine with that. I didn't owe Leslie protection anymore. I didn't owe her silence. But I also didn't want revenge. Not the dramatic kind, at least. No confrontations. No phone calls. No shouting matches. I didn't want to hear her voice trying to spin it into something soft, something forgivable. What was there left to say? She had a child, a man, a new country, a whole ecosystem I'd never been invited into. And she'd still shown up to my farewell party, toasted to my fake misdeeds, and laughed like I was some kind of sideshow. That was what stuck with me the most. She wasn't just cheating. She was celebrating it. Humiliating me wasn't a side effect. It was part of the plan. Like my public embarrassment was her final step in moving on. Some twisted rite of passage. And I'd let her do it. Let her walk me into that room. Into that trap. Blind and smiling and proud of what I thought we'd built. The version of me that walked into that pub was someone who believed in her. In us. That guy was gone now. A week passed. Then another. And eventually, I realized there wasn't going to be some dramatic closure. No call. No apology. No confession. She wasn't going to tell me the truth. I'd already found it without her help. She didn't know me the truth. Because in her mind, I didn't exist anymore. I was the mistake she'd cleaned up after. The loose end she'd snipped. The subplot she'd erased before the next chapter could begin. And that was when I understood what I had to do. Not forgive. Not forget. Just disappear. They say when a snake is ready to shed its skin, it starts to go blind. Everything gets blurry. The old world, the old shell. It peels away in silence, and the snake moves forward, raw and sharp, seeing everything for the first time. That's what it felt like. Not a meltdown. Not a breakdown. Just a slow, steady shedding of the life I thought I had. It started with small things. I deleted our shared photo album, the one synced between our phones. The cloud popped up a warning. This action cannot be undone. Good. I went through my contacts and cleared her family. Her sisters. Her coworkers I once hung out with. The real ones would notice eventually. The fake ones wouldn't. I opened the closet, stared at the clothes I hadn't worn since before things fell apart, and dropped them into a donation bag. Every hoodie she'd ever stolen from me. Every jacket she'd ever complimented. Gone. Then I stood in the middle of the room and realized it wasn't enough. This wasn't about removing her anymore. It was about removing myself. The version of me that built a life around someone who never saw me. The version that waited at the door with takeout and tried to fix things with homemade playlists and flowers on Thursdays. The guy who apologized for things he didn't do. Who swallowed red flags like vitamins. That guy had stayed long enough. It was time for someone else to show up. I drained the last $4,872. 16 from our joint account early one morning, just after sunrise. I didn't even flinch. That was the same amount she'd spent on a girls' trip to Palm Springs a year ago, the one I now realized had been with him. The math felt poetic. I left her the rest of it, just like she'd left me the rest of our broken life. I packed a single duffel bag, 2 shirts, a notebook, a photo of my dad, and my passport. Then I opened my laptop. The name change process wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard either. I'd always thought names were permanent. But as it turns out, all it takes is a few forms, a filing fee, and a court that doesn't ask too many questions. Evan Mitchell died quietly that week. Lee Hunter took his place. No funeral, no eulogy, just a new signature, a new start. I drove for 15 hours. No GPS, no plan. Just gas stations and back roads and old classic rock on a radio that cut in and out like it was trying to let go too. Eventually, I found myself in a small town 2 states over, where nobody knew me and nobody cared. That's where I stayed. I found a job cleaning cars at night for a rental company. Same industry, new people. The work was simple, repetitive, clean. No one asked questions. They liked that I kept my head down. I liked that no one expected more. I paid cash for a tiny studio above a defunct video rental store. The carpet smelled like mildew. The shower took 10 minutes to get hot. But it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe without checking over my shoulder. No shared utilities. No emergency contacts. No subscriptions. No LinkedIn. No Instagram. I even changed my Spotify name. All those playlists we made together deleted. Every account tied to my old phone number nuked. I called the landlord back home and told him I was signing the lease over to my partner. He didn't ask questions. Just asked if she could cover the unpaid taxes. She could. She had to. Because the house was hers now. And all the debt with it. There were no goodbye texts. No dramatic final note. Just silence. That was the point. Silence makes people nervous. It leaves space. Creates questions. A disappearance is different from a breakup. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait around for validation. It simply erases your shadow from the wall and walks away before anyone notices. I knew what people would say. He overreacted. He ghosted her. He ran away. Good. Let them guess. Because I wasn't running from something. I was walking towards something else. Even if I didn't know what that was yet. The first few weeks I barely spoke. Just enough to get by. That'll be $14.90. Next vehicle's ready. Need more towels. People started calling me Ghost. I didn't mind. At night I'd write. In the notebook I brought, I started keeping track of what I called echoes. Those little pieces of my old life that tried to sneak back in. A song. A word. A scent. First echo. The smell of her perfume on a woman at a gas station. I froze in the aisle, heart racing like I'd seen a ghost. I wrote it down. Labeled it, then let it go. Second echo. A voicemail from an unknown number. No voice. Just 3 seconds of background noise, wind, maybe traffic. I blocked the number. Burned the SIM card 2 days later. Third echo. A dream where she was laughing in a restaurant, but her face kept changing. Sometimes it was her. Sometimes it was me. Each one got easier to ignore. Each one meant less than the last. I started reading again. Books I never had time for. I picked up a library card under my new name and tore through used paperbacks like I was trying to absorb a new personality through ink and torn pages. I bought a cheap watch. A flannel jacket that didn't remind me of anything. I changed my walk. Changed how I answered questions. Started telling people I was from Milwaukee. That I'd worked in logistics in another lifetime. That I moved for peace. They believed it. Maybe because I said it like it didn't matter. Maybe because people don't want to know too much. They just want a version of you that fits into their day. And this new version fit just fine. The old me might have waited for a confrontation. Might have stalked her social media. Might have tried to understand. Lee Hunter didn't. Lee Hunter didn't care if she was looking for me. He didn't care if she was scared. Or curious. Or angry. He didn't care if she tried to spin the story or play the victim. Because Lee Hunter didn't exist the last time she lied to me. And Evan, the man she mocked in front of a crowd, wasn't here anymore to hear it. I thought disappearing would feel like dying. But it didn't. It felt like waking up. At first, she thought I was being dramatic. I know because Jenna, her sister, tried to reach me 3 days after I disappeared. She left a voicemail that started with a half laugh. Like I was just taking a break to cool off. Hey, Evan, or, I guess you're still Evan? Look, Leslie's worried. Not like panicked, just wondering where you are. I told her you probably just needed space. You know, after everything. Call me back. Okay? Let's not make this a bigger thing than it needs to be. I didn't call her back. A week later, a second voicemail. This one quieter. No laugh. Okay. This is starting to feel weird. She said she tried your work and your phone's disconnected. If you're trying to scare her, congratulations. She's freaking out. Just, can you at least let us know you're alive? Alive, sure. Just not in the way they remembered. I deleted the message. Burned that number too. Back in her world, I could imagine the timeline. First came the irritation. He's sulking. Then the shift to confusion. Why isn't he answering? Then the smallest sprout of panic. Wait. Did he actually leave? But panic doesn't hit all at once. comes in waves. The first is manageable. You tell yourself it's a phase, a bad dream. Maybe he's being petty. Maybe he wants attention. What you don't consider, not at first, is that someone who always stayed might one day just stop. By week 2, I was gone in every way that counted. Bank accounts closed or emptied. My name stripped from every lease, every joint account, every bill. Credit cards canceled. Insurance voided. Subscriptions terminated. Online presence scrubbed. I even locked down my old email, not deleted, just frozen. A ghost inbox collecting dust. Like a house boarded up on a forgotten street. The house? It was hers now. The title was transferred, taxes and all. I left no warnings, no instructions. Just a manila folder on the kitchen table labeled yours. Inside were the documents, mortgage agreements, backdated tax statements, utility bills, all transferred to her name, effective immediately. The folder also included one final sheet, a printed photo, the one from Vancouver. No caption, just the image. That was the only message I left. Not to guilt her, not to confront her, but to make it clear, I saw it. I knew, and I walked away anyway. Jenna called again. Her voice cracked this time. Leslie's. She's not doing great. The house is getting foreclosure notices. You didn't leave a note, a message. Nothing? Seriously? You just vanished? What kind of person does that? The kind of person no longer responsible for the damage someone else caused. I heard she went to the warehouse 2 weeks after my disappearance. Showed up in the middle of a shift, asking if anyone had seen me. She cornered Kyle in the parking lot. He told her he didn't know where I was. He didn't tell you anything? She asked, voice shaking. Kyle just shrugged. We thought you'd know. When she got home, the lights had been shut off. I'm told she cried for hours in the dark. Leslie's first instinct was control. She tried to file a missing person report, but she couldn't answer the basics. No signs of struggle, no threats, no texts, nothing illegal, just silence. She called my parents. They hadn't heard from me. I'd warned them weeks earlier, vague but firm. Things are changing. Don't be alarmed. I'm okay. Please don't share anything if she reaches out. They kept their word. She messaged coworkers, old friends, acquaintances. Most didn't answer. The few who did offered only shoulder shrugs and vague support. Turns out, people don't rally behind someone who publicly humiliates their partner and gets caught cheating weeks later. And once the Vancouver photo made the rounds, her credibility evaporated. Some tried to be kind. Most didn't bother. Then came the hard part. The mortgage company called. She didn't know about the tax debt, or the late utility payments I'd let pile up. We'd always split things, but I had stopped covering my half long before the party. I just hadn't told her yet. Suddenly, her name was the only one on the documents. No safety net, no backup plan. She tried to file for spousal support, but when her lawyer looked into it, they found I had no recent records. No income trail, no W-2s, no employer on file, no lease, no credit activity. Nothing past the day I vanished. I don't get it, she told someone. How can someone just erase themselves like that? The answer was simple. You stop pretending the world owes you explanation. You stop being available. You stop existing, at least to the people who no longer deserve to find you. I didn't hear her voice again for months, but I imagined the spiral. I imagined the dinner she burned when the gas bill went unpaid. The text she sent to Mark that got left unread. The empty house that echoed too loudly at night. The photo frame she took down because it hurt too much to look at. The questions from coworkers who used to laugh at her jokes. Have you talked to him? Do you know why he left? I imagined her looking them in the eyes and realizing she didn't have an answer that made her look good. By month 3, she stopped reaching out entirely. Not because she didn't want to, but because she finally realized she was chasing a ghost. And ghosts don't call back. I changed by then. I'd stopped checking for echoes, stopped listening for old songs. My nights were quieter. I got promoted at the car wash to inventory manager, a title no one cared about but me. My boss was a guy named Ramon who wore the same boots every day and never asked about my past. He trusted me. That was enough. I grew a beard, switched my walk-up music to silence. I started buying groceries at the farmer's market. I carried a small notebook everywhere. I wrote quotes from people who didn't know my story. I started becoming someone who didn't feel like they needed to be forgiven just to feel whole again. And Leslie? She faded. Not like a storm. Not like a villain. Just like someone who didn't matter anymore. I heard months later that she tried to sell the house. Couldn't. Too much debt. Tried to refinance. Denied. Eventually, she moved into a one-bedroom apartment across town. She sold the engagement ring, listed her car, started biking to work. A friend of a friend saw her once at a diner working a second job. Said she looked tired, quieter than she used to be. Said she flinched when someone asked her if she was married. She said, "No," and that was true, because I was gone. Not angry, not vengeful, just absent. People think revenge is fire, explosions,